really, because we are a small team, all of that work gets done through partnership. So we recognize that there's a lot of great things happening in our area that we want to lift up. And then we want to identify where are there things not working as well and address those gaps together.
Nice. Okay. When did the organization actually begin?
Well, we started in April of 2013. So we actually,
Okay.
the job I applied for was a local food coordinator position. And really, I think my qualification was that I like to shop at the farmer's market. So
Hey,
hey, I was like, I don't really know what you talk about when you keep saying local food system, but I'm willing to figure it out. So we
well,
started there, and
that
we're
makes
actually
sense.
housed with Des Moines Area Religious Council initially.
Gotcha.
So
So,
yeah.
so take us back for you. You said kind of you didn't have the background. What was your background? And then lead us up to the point where you say, all right, I'm going to get into the food system.
Yeah, well, my undergrad, I actually have a background in health and wellness, health promotion.
Okay.
So I've always understood the value of eating good food, but necessarily understanding where it came from. Growing up in Southwest Iowa, we had, corn and, cows and stuff behind us, but I had never been on a farm. So, I was just really one of those who appreciated good food, but really didn't understand that sometimes you can go shop at a farmer's market and, when there's watermelon in May at the farmer's market, like it didn't dawn on me that, oh, those probably weren't grown here. So, it was really just kind of eye opening to me to see that there's probably a lot of people out there like me that have good intentions and want to be supporting our neighbors and, supporting those that are doing the hard work of growing food, but just have been so far removed from all of it that helping just kind of raise some awareness can bring all those connections back. So I started off in corporate wellness, teaching fitness classes and doing a lot of just making the whole why wellness is important to companies, because people who feel better, work better, have better lives. So started in that space, actually got my master's in public administration. And mostly I picked public administration because you didn't have to have a thesis paper. So it wasn't because I
Hey,
had big dreams about public administration. I was like, I'm not really sure what that means, but there's
well,
no thesis. So I'm in.
is that or a liberal arts degree? You just
I
kind
know,
of
got
don't
to like,
know.
oh, what are my options? So and then I ended up working at United Way most recently before this position. So that was a great opportunity for me just to learn more about all the different nonprofits that were throughout Central Iowa doing great work. So when this position it was, something new, they hadn't done it before, the local food coordinator roles and offices had them, but we were actually sitting, Polk and Dallas County did not have a local foods coordinator. So it was United Way and DMARC initially who said, this is really something that we feel like is important to have in our communities. So they put that initial funding towards hiring what eventually was me and then my co-founder, Linda Gabriel. So we just got started really by going and interviewing people all throughout the food system. And really, it was just an opportunity for me to understand, kind of what their perspective was, whether it was a producer, those that are in the processing space, those that are sell items to people locally, and then also the waste side of things. So we spent 6 months just asking what's going really well, what would you like to see more of, and then where are their gaps? And that's really what helped us define what we would do. Being a team of two, we had to be smart about what we were doing. So that kind of helped us narrow in on really the system change side of things. So how are we going to bring the right people together to just build upon, sharing ideas and not making it so that everyone has to recreate the wheel.
Yeah, you know what? That really speaks to me because I tell people all the time, like, I don't have all the answers. I'm just really good at asking the questions, finding smart people, and then recognizing a good answer. And for sure, that's literally what this whole show has been. It's just asking enough questions, you find good answers. And a lot of times it's because multiple smart people are telling you the same thing. The more questions you ask, the more opportunity you have for good information. So you're going around, you're asking questions. What's the first then mission? What you come away from that 6 months of just diving into a world that you didn't, admittedly know
Mm-hmm.
that much about, and we're realizing that is so complex, so many different motivators, so many different business models, so many different humans involved in it, so many different logistics, and on and on and on and on.
Oh
It is,
yeah,
I'm sure you were sifting through a massive mess of information and infrastructure and red tape and bureaucracy, all of it.
all of
The
it. I
first
had
thing out of
no
the door.
idea.
Yeah, right. The
There were
first
so
thing out
many
of the door,
acronyms.
what is the biggest need that you saw? What was the first step out of the gate once you had that 6 months of background?
I think the biggest piece that was new to me was just the opportunity to, in regarding to food waste and food recovery. That was, I think, what was most astounding to me was how much work and energy goes into producing food and, all the different levels. And then we're so careless with all of it. And, it was astounding to me. I guess I just thought that people were being better about it. It just made sense. Why would you throw away perfectly good food if there was nothing wrong with it? It just didn't have a use where it was. So I think that was one of the biggest kind of aha moments for me was, wow, like we have a huge opportunity to do a whole lot better in this space and support people all along the system, because it's not benefiting anyone to spend all these resources to produce food and then throw it in the landfill.
I like your mindset. You went to opportunity. Clearly, there was a lot of wrong. There was a lot of struggle, a lot of challenges. I'm very into mindset. So it's very
Mm-hmm.
much a focus on there's opportunity, right? There are no problems, only opportunities for solutions. I'm into it. So I
Yes.
like that. You're coming out of the gate, and that's the goal and focus. Give us a couple highlights through the years of kind of the work that you've done, because I'm sure you've had to ebb and flow and evolve and back
Mm-hmm.
and forth. Kind of give us some high level points of the work over the years. And then I want to dig into kind of what's happening today for you.
Yeah, well, it's actually fun that one of your upcoming interviews, Brett, with the cheese shop, was one of those amazing initial connections that I made. And just going through and talking to those, local businesses and restaurants that were trying to do their best to source local, but then also really just being authentic and creative and what they were kind of putting together. So that was one of my first opportunities. He also invited me to go process chickens, which
Here we
when
go.
I asked, I was like, okay, so just to be clear, when you say process, you mean like killing things, right? He's like, yep, that's the process. So, I was only probably 6 to 9 months into my position. And I was like, you got to do it. Like, this is why, like, you got to understand how
Yeah.
this works. So it was actually before my husband and I, we were just dating at the time. And I think that's probably what sealed the deal. I was like, well, he was willing to go, on a
Yeah.
fourth date to process chicken. So that must work. So just
Perfect. A match made
getting to
in
see the love and
chicken
care
slaughter
to
heaven.
the
I love
food.
it.
Yes, it was. I haven't done it since, but I did it one time. So we had done just learning about how local producers and just the different challenges that they faced with kind of that breaking point of when you were able to grow food, have things processed, and still make money versus you have to move to that like mass production, and seeing just how fragile that piece is, and that we have that middle piece broken. There isn't the aggregation and transformation space in there for those small to medium size, farms and producers. So that was a really apparent gap. One of the ways we tried to solve it, this was 2014. So we
Okay.
did some speed dating between producers and wholesale, some chefs and restaurants that maybe are wanting to get into the local food procurement space. So that was also one of those good opportunities to hear. There was a lot of, whether it was a chef or a restaurant or a grocery store that was wanting to purchase local, there was just no simple way for them to
Right.
do it. And that huge disconnect between those who needed to, kind of get in touch with each other. So that was one of those first just system kind of things to see how disjointed and difficult it really was for those that were trying to go out on their own, and whether it was starting a restaurant or starting a farm where you're actually growing, food, that it was really difficult. So we also did a lot with, one of the first things were supporting school, community, and faith-based gardens. So that's actually where Eat Greater Des Moines, the website, started. So eatgreaterdesmoines.org was around before there were any people. So when we started at DMARC, they asked, what do you want your name to be? And I was like, oh, is there a website? Yeah, eatgreaterdesmoines.org. And I was like, sounds great. Eat Greater Des Moines, like
That was
easy
easy.
peasy. Yeah, like, okay, that's it. So they had already mapped all the school, community, and faith-based gardens. And I think everyone was trying to figure out how could we really build that space. And, there's definitely been some ups and downs in there. There's a lot of great
Sure.
intentions, but I think there's also, we've learned a lot about you have to show up. People have to show up in order for those to work. And you can't just put in a garden and think that it's just going to magically, prosper. People have to water it and weed it eventually.
It's always humans. It always, always, always comes down to humans. There's a couple
Mhm.
things when you're talking about Brett that I kind of want to dig into a little bit.
Yeah.
One was, it definitely feels like you're very much, and I feel this way too, a translator for people that think they speak the same language because they're in food, they're in agriculture, they're in hospitality, yet really they don't speak the same language. Just, is that the case?
Completely. Because
Most of
I
your
didn't
job is probably
understand,
that.
I didn't realize that, because I didn't speak the language either when I came in.
Sure.
There were so many acronyms and different, ways of talking about stuff that a lot of times in meetings I would just be writing things down. And luckily, my counterpart Linda, she had more of that knowledge. So we'd get out and I was like, what were they talking about? I have no idea what was the reefa swig and IFC and all these kinds of things. So it's really been that translation that has continued beyond, because it's hard, it's easy to get really involved in your
Yes.
space and just try to keep track of that, trying to understand your space plus 6 other spaces well enough to like really identify opportunities is hard. And that's really the beauty that table is. We just get to see things from a high level, and then those kinds of opportunities stand out to us because I'm not so far into the weeds that we've
Yes.
lost track of it. But it's also, easier for me on this side to be like, oh yeah, well, that should be easy, let's just put this that
Yeah.
together and not be intimidated by how
Never,
hard it might
never
be.
easy. But I think this
No.
is good because sometimes institutional knowledge gets put on a pedestal and there's immense amounts of value, yet it also breeds institutional bias. Like you were just so close to it, you can't see the forest through the trees. And every analogy, iteration you can imagine from that. So I
Mhm.
appreciate that. Brett and chefs. That's really our community, is the chef. Do you see the chef having a very unique position in the past, and I very much believe in the future, for being the connective tissue that makes the whole food ecosystem cool and accessible? Those are the two things I feel like chefs can really do. Have you seen that? Are you working
Mhm.
towards that? Where and how can our community speak to us right now?
Yeah.
Because chefs are amazing and we're a pain in the ass as well. So, like, give us a little bit of understanding, chefs specifically within the
Yeah.
world, the system that you're trying to create of interconnectivity across the food system.
Well, and it really, I think chefs, because they're so passionate about food and having a good experience and making sure that everyone, doesn't just enjoy what they're eating, but also can kind of have that next level of like all the care and love that went into what the final product was. And a lot of that comes down to, where did it come from? Where
Yep.
did these ingredients, how were they cared for along the way? So, that's really what I think the chefs in our space. We have Suman, who's at Hawk in the East Village, and they are 98% sourced local. And the amount of knowledge and love that
Wow.
I think that he just doesn't, he's just amazing. He knows, he's a butcher. He does a lot of freezing and canning and processing. The amount of love and care and knowledge that he has about what's able to be grown here, all the different things that can happen with it, is really some of the, for those of us that maybe enjoy eating good food, but don't always have the understanding of some of the intricacies on how to make it so special. It's great to see that kind of be passed along by accident, is usually what we talk about. Like when people just accidentally learn things and they're like, man, that was delicious. I thought I hated tomatoes, but really, I just haven't had a tomato that was actually grown outside and, got to pick it fresh. So, those
Mind
kinds of
blown.
things, or that like carrots grow in the ground, those are the kinds of things that I took one of my we were volunteering in our school garden, and I took some girlfriends, mind you, like these are all people in their 30s, a lot of them grew up in Iowa. We were helping harvest potatoes at a school garden, and they were digging it up, and then there's all these potatoes. And I had to keep my friends away. I was like, let the kids, let the kids get in there and harvest them. But they're all like, that's amazing. Do you see all those potatoes down there? And it's that ability to make it accessible for people to not only enjoy the food, but then we know that that's where community is built, is over meals. That's where people have a chance to
Yes.
talk, and that's where Brett, I think, is another great example. During all of this, kind of the COVID crisis, everyone, it has been really tough, obviously, in the hospitality and food industry. And instead of just, sitting back and being like, ugh, you know what, this is awful, he jumped in and was really instrumental in helping feed one of the Riverbend neighborhood in Des Moines, and just did it. And that's, his whole thing, like, don't just talk about it, be about it, I think has been, that's the kind of love and care that gets transferred when people are passionate about what they're doing. And then that's why people keep coming back, and that's what we want for, whether it's at that, cheese shop level, or even at those that are, serving people through a food pantry or through a free meal site. Everyone should experience that dignity and love and respect and care when they have a meal. And we want that to be a space where people can come back and connect with each other and just incrementally make different choices that end up supporting, everybody in the food system.
All right. What you just said, we're going to go deeper into that. I want to jump back real quick. What Hawk is doing, 98% local. I want to make sure that people understand.
That's
A
huge.
farm to table restaurant, the conversation starts at 25%. And if you get above 50%, you're doing really good when it comes to where you're spending your food dollars within your own market. To get above 90% is really difficult
It's
and
astounding.
really important. It's amazing to me. Like I just almost want like a moment of silence right now, because I want everybody watching and listening to this to know that that is a monumental achievement. So if you have farm to table somewhere on your menu, somewhere on your website, it's time to level up, because you can get to those percentages, but it takes a lot of work, and it takes building community, which then is what I want to talk about. What you mentioned with Brett, with the work that they did with feeding their neighborhood. And I think it goes even deeper than that. What we're recognizing right now is that the high-end restaurant and the food pantry and the school garden and the small farm and the little cafe are the same.
Mm-hmm.
The experience may be slightly different, but the mission, the fundamental and foundational work that they're doing is the same. You are feeding humans and building community. That's it. And so I think it's very important to recognize that it's the responsibility that I alluded to earlier, that I believe that chefs and restaurants have, is it doesn't matter what food trend is hot right now and what you're on. It matters what you do with the position that you're given and the attention that you're given to do something about it. So I really, really appreciate that. Let's go a little deeper. What is the work that's happening right now that you're day to day, that as soon as we end this here, you're going right into the next thing? What is the work today that you're doing?
Well, we are actually right at an interesting point because, COVID, when it hit right at middle of March, things obviously blew up for everybody. And so some of the big pieces for us is that was really a space where our food recovery work really increased. So not only we had quite a few restaurants and hotels that were just closing down, and so they had whole kitchens and freezers full of food. So we were trying to navigate how we could find spaces for that food to go. At the same time, we had some of our regular food recovery routes where, we pick up food. We hire drivers to pick up food from convenience stores and deliver it to locations 3 days a week. A lot of those were schools, and so they all closed. So it was a lot of shifting. So we've been running, just really trying to figure out finding new drivers, finding new places. We didn't miss any dates. At the same time, USDA, with this farm to food opportunity there, we had tons of fresh produce and dairy items that were available, which was amazing. But keep in mind, we are not a warehouse. We don't have pallets. So, we were figuring it out as we were going along. And up until the last week, we were providing 50,000 pounds of produce and dairy items in produce boxes and dairy boxes to just organizations. Those are churches. Some of them were Knock and Drop is one of these amazing Latino-led organizations that literally is just knocking and dropping off food and supplies at Latino homes, especially those who maybe aren't able to get access to the different resources. So we're trying to support those who are doing great work, but fall outside of that usual food, emergency food space. These are not food pantries. These are just people in the community who stepped up and were like, I need to do what I can to help my community and my neighbors. And that's what we wanted them to have the food. So that was quite a huge undertaking, just to manage all of that. But we made it. And it just, unfortunately, it ended as it was. Kind of the produce and dairy boxes are changing. So now that's our big piece and focus for the future is how are we going to replace all of that product that was huge? We were moving that every Tuesday and Thursday. Obviously, there's high demand. We just need to find where the product is. So we're kind of shifting our focus right now to gleaning and doing more on-farm food recovery. And then also farmers markets, they're starting to open up and, seeing some of those opportunities to just get people, farmers markets are one of those great ways for people to meet their farmer, meet their neighbor. We've got great food trucks that are going. So we're trying to, it's tricky, safety wise, just trying to get people to feel comfortable and secure going to these spaces. These markets have done a great job. So, and then we'll be, school year getting started again. So it's all we kind of just go where the energy and momentum takes us. That's one of the beauties that we're a small team. There's 3 of us. So we're always kind of like, what's up now? What's the opportunity? And how do we need to figure it out? So it's a little stressful, but good.
You're in logistics and transportation. Who would have known that when you started this whole thing as well? So
yeah.
Des Moines, let's now, we've zoomed way in. Let's zoom way back when, your mission is to serve the greater Des Moines area. Talk about kind of what that means for you as Des Moines. I'll say this. People who watch the show, they know my background. I started in Ames, Iowa when I was 17 years old in my uncle's restaurant, Wallabies. They have a little empire of, 5, 6 restaurants here. Went to culinary school. So I have a lot of love. It's taken Des Moines and Iowa a while to kind of like be what I would call an emerging food city, but it absolutely is. And we're going to showcase some of that this week. There is some amazing people. We've already highlighted a few doing amazing work here. As you zoom back a little bit and look at the impact that you are having, but moreover, the people and humans in food and beverage and hospitality in Des Moines, what does it mean?
I think it's super important just to have the opportunity and really to be blessed enough to get to interact with all these amazing people. I think I'm really lucky that I do get to go and talk with all these people, whether they are, on the growing side. We've got to go, Story City has an amazing still kind of recently opened Meat Locker. And those are not things that you see very often anymore. And I think, it's really fun for me to be able to go back when I was growing up in a small town in Southwest Iowa. All I ever wanted to do was to eat at a restaurant that had a commercial. I was like, oh my God, like I just want to eat somewhere. That was it. I was like, you are living life. You get to go to Applebee's. Like, whew, this is amazing. And now I've completely turned around to realize like how good I had it with all the small, local, seasonal kind of, restaurants that we had growing up. So I'm hoping, that's been kind of the beauty of seeing people start to recognize that we can get back to some of that. It's not an either or, it's not all or nothing, but we are able to build up more of those things that we want to see more of. And that comes down to just who you support, where you spend your dollars, and who you lift up in some of these, kind of hard times.
It's a perfect way to end, because right as you're talking, I'm like, it's the humans that you interact with. It's thinking about the people behind the food system, the impact that they're having. And Jenny Smith from Butcher Creek Farms is who connected us. Jenny worked with my wife, Betsy, at the cafe back in the day. And like, we kept that connection going. And now she went into the food system, and she, July through October, you can count on her tomatoes.
Yeah.
The rest of the year, she's not giving you, a bunch of gassed tomatoes, because her perspective on the food system is very different, just like yours is. And I think it's an important reflection, and just good people connecting good people is how this entire show has been fueled. So I'm so grateful to have talked with you. I'm very excited to talk to Jenny tomorrow, and to Brett and the whole crew this week. We got some we're going to follow up, because Hawk we need to get connected with.
Yes.
The knock and drop, that's a really cool concept that I hadn't heard of before. I'm into that. We got a lot to talk about.
Heck
Not
yeah.
enough for a 30-minute show. So thank you so much, Aubrey, for being on. Really appreciate you.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a great day. Cheers.
Cheers.
All right. I'm serious. We got a lot to talk about. There's really amazing people everywhere. All right. I've been guilty of it plenty of times. I felt like I was leveling up. I went from Iowa and made my bones and cut my teeth here, and then graduated from culinary school. And I'm like, I got to go to a bigger food city. Went to Kansas City, a bigger food city. I'm going to Denver. Like, I know now so much that there's always been these great humans everywhere. So do not discount anywhere that you are at any moment. There are amazing people that are doing something within food, beverage, and hospitality that matter. When I said that restaurants at the highest level and the food pantry, they're the same. All right. They spread this way, not this way. I really, really am believing that. And I want you to understand that there are great people, and the 3 Michelin star and the food pantry serve the same mission. They may go about it slightly differently. The experience, price points, access, different. The mission of connecting people through food, that is absolutely what we're talking about. All right, Sophie, you can jump in here.
Hello.
Hey.
What's up?
How was your weekend? I haven't seen you in a while.
It was great.
Awesome.
How was yours?
Hear it. Awesome. It's totally different weather out here than in Denver, that's for sure. But
how the bug bites going?
We got a couple bug bites.
Yeah. Yep.
We've gotten a couple bug bites. All right. A couple takeaways from that show. Great way to kick off the week here in Iowa.
It was wonderful. Yeah. I think she was really into, supporting so many. She came from like not a food background, so going and getting to experience all these things and relearn all the food acronyms, which there are so many. She's not wrong there. And I really loved that Eat Greater Des Moines started as supporting the gardens, and then it started going into a lot more about food waste and how to not have the food waste. And I think that, man, that's intense. Taking your future husband on a date to go chicken.
That's either going to bring you together forever or never again.
Oh, yeah. That's pretty gutsy.
I really like that. I think that was profound. I mentioned kind of the institutional knowledge, the institutional bias. It's very easy to be like, well, you're not one of us kind of scenario. But again, sometimes you need people with perspective. And the fact that Aubrey was willing to go in there and slaughter and process a chicken, well, you have street cred forever with any chef, because you know what? There's a lot of chefs that have never done that. I have dispatched a few chickens and ducks in my time as well. And you know what? I don't really want to do that anymore, but I felt like it was important to be like, no. You need to put your money where your mouth is, kid. So, all right. Really appreciate that. Sophie, thank you so much. And everybody, great way to kick off this week. Check out all this week, July 6th through 12th. We're going to have episodes from the great state of Iowa, again, where I first started my career way back. Little punk kid from Southern California coming out to Iowa. A lot of culture shock, working the restaurants, and I found my tribe. You all know what I'm talking about. I found my people. We were crazy. We were an island of misfit toys, the band of rebels, pirates on the pirate ship, all of it. And I was all in, hooked for sure. So tomorrow's episode, Jenny Smith. On Wednesday, we have Tiffany Cannon from Oh So Sweet. We got Joe Tripp from Harbinger. We got Gwen page from Fong's Pizza, the iconic Fong's Pizza with the crab rangoon pizza. You're going to find out about that. If you don't know, you're going to know. Brett McClavey, who's mentioned, Cheese Bar, the cheese shop, and then my friend Ben Hayes, who's cooking it up for Facebook now. And I didn't even ask him what the deal with that was, because I want to be surprised like you. What does that mean? You're cooking for Facebook. So he and I went to culinary school way back in the day at Des Moines Area Community College, DMAC, as it was called. So, all right, I don't know why I'm babbling on, but I appreciate you guys, and we will see you tomorrow. Cheers.